But this tutorial covers this week and next week, and it's in two parts. So this week we are going to look at how to create a flat landscape using shapes and colour. And next week we're going to take the same landscape and look at how we can composite into a matte painting with images and textures and brushes. So this week we're going to work on this flat landscape here. I'm going to create this in monochromatic colours. That means we will use one colour and shades of that colour, so different brightnesses. You can do it in multiple colours and play with colour theory. Remember we looked at colour theory early on. Instead of monochromatic, you could use analogous or triads or complementary colours. You can find these by going to Window, Extensions, and choose Adobe Colour Themes. Here you've got a choice of wheels and sliders. So let's have a look at wheels first. We've got Create and we've got Explore. Explore means you can have a look at different sets made by other users. That other people think go together well. Or you can choose by theme and maybe search in the themes there. So just search desert. And that gives me some colour sets that are kind of already matched that way. But it's much more fun to make your own. So if we go back to Create and look at the colour wheel, you can choose your colour here by dragging it out till you find your base colour. And you can adjust down here on the slider as well. And then you can look under the colour rules here and set a rule for choosing your colour group. So we have monochromatic, which is what we're going to use today. We have triad. Complementary, so things on the other side of the colour wheel. Compound. Shades, which is quite similar really to our monochrome. And you can choose customs as well there. We're going to look at monochromatic. You can also go to sliders and just put in colour codes if you have them already. So I could insert my own colour codes here. If you aren't familiar with colour theory and you don't want to work from the colour themes, you can just use the colour picker and try and keep the shades that you choose within that spectrum. And I'm just going to create a new page to work on. And I'm going to do mine vertical, or portrait, but you could do it landscape if you prefer. And create a new layer to work on. If you want to, you can draw guidelines for your layers to help you visualise. So you might want to pencil your ideas in. I'm going to have kind of a rock here for my wolf. I'm just going to go here. Using the touchpad on a MacBook, so it's not going to be very accurate. Some coming there, those So if you want to work that way, that's fine. If you want to put perspective lines in to help you, remember you can grab rulers from here. And you can use the brush tool to just put the lines in. You could usually just work freehand, then you are fine to do that as well. Everybody works differently. I've got my lasso tool, L on the keyboard. Just going to start by drawing in my first piece of rock. You can Command Z to step back if you're not happy with it, or Command D to deselect. Just make sure you get all the way back to the beginning, because this is a closed shape and you need to close the shape. Choose the fill tool. I'm going to fill that colour in. I'm going to choose the colour picker, and I can swap around the configurations here by just changing in the HSB values there. This is quite a nice, suitable darkish colour. I'm just going to go with that for my front. Now if I get the fill tool, I can fill that shape. I'll make a new layer. I'm going to fill that. And if there's a bit I'm not happy with, I can deselect it and just maybe add a little bit on. Just to make sure I close the shape. So I'm just going to mess around now until I've got the whole of that front layer in. And then create a new layer. I'm going to start drawing in the next piece of the background in the same way, using the lasso tool. I'm going to pull this, and this time with colour I'm just going to move up the colour scale until I get the colour I want. To add a new layer to put that onto. There we go. Command D to deselect. Do the same thing. Choose a new colour from the colour picker there. Oops, maybe not there. Create a new layer and just fill that in. So I'm just going to keep building up until I've got what I want. And create a new layer to work on. Fill it in, it's a bit dark. Let's have something a bit lighter. Deselect, and I'm now just going to put my mountain in at the back here. New layer. Choose a colour. Just make sure that's in the right place in the layers palette. Command D to deselect. If I'm not happy with any of the parts, I can squash them, stretch them, move them around, put them where I actually want to go. You hold down Shift, you can do an unproportional stretch. And just move around. So Command T to get the box, and then just drop and drag. Okay, so I'm looking at this now, I'm thinking my mountain is probably a bit bright, so I can desaturate it, I can brighten it and so on using the adjustment layers. If I use Control M on the keyboard, that brings up the curves, and I can just come in and make adjustment. I can brighten the colour, I can darken it. Or I can choose the adjustment icon on the layers palette and then choose from there. So brightness, contrast levels, exposure. I can change the colour balance or the saturation. I need to make sure I click this icon on if I want it to only affect the layer that I'm working on. So make sure you do that. Next I want to add a background colour, so I've added a layer in here over the background. I'm going to fill it, choose my colour, and I want this to be lighter than the mountain, so I'm working backwards in colour. And again, if I'm not happy with it, I can just adjust it. So finally I'm going to add a moon type thing up here, or a sun. I'm just going to do that by going to the elliptical marquee tool, dragging it out, hold down Shift to make sure it's proportional, and then I'm going to fill that with a really light version of my colour. deselect it. So you can see it's starting to build up now. I'm just going to go through and adjust any of the colours that I'm not happy with, because obviously I'm not happy with this one here that seems to be out of the colour balance. And I maybe like some of this to be darker as well. Okay, so next I just want to put a bit of highlight on the mountain and perhaps around here on the bottom of this here. So another new layer, back to the lasso tool, and I'm just going to draw in the bit that I want. And fill tool. Just fill that. And Command D to deselect again. I'll lighten these up in a moment because I'm really happy with that. So where these are all on the same layer now, I can just choose an adjustment for all of them. Just clip that to the layer there. Okay, and let's do another new layer. I'm just going to highlight the edge of that mountain bit there. So you can really spend a lot of time just building up in that way. So next we want to start putting in some trees and things. There are loads of different ways to do this, and we're just looking for quick ways that you can build up with trees. So there are different ways to do this. If you've got a newer version of Photoshop, so 2019, 2020, possibly earlier, you can go to Filter, down to Render, and if your computer is fast enough, if your graphics card is good enough, it will let you render trees, flames and all sorts of other things. Mine won't do that. So I'm doing my trees old school style with the brush. So we did brush making early on in the program. I'm going to make a new file to work on. I'm just going to use the clipboard because I don't need great quality. And then you can get any brush, then you can take any tree silhouette from Google, or just find an image of a tree that has no background. Just going to select roughly the area. And again, if you're on older versions of Photoshop, you'll need to grayscale this, but 19 and 20 both allow you to do this straight from colour. And go to Edit, Define Brush Preset. Give it a name, and go to OK. You deselect, you can try that there. I'm going to make a new layer to work on. I'm just going to choose a new colour for my brush. I really want to go as dark as possible for the trees at the front here. And if I go to the brush settings, I can space out my trees. I can adjust the size and anything else that I want to do. If you're using a graphics tablet and you have pressure sensitivity, you can choose how dark your trees are by how hard you push on a graphics tablet. If you're using a keypad like this, you will have to click once for a lightish tree and then click on top for a darker tree. You can also go to Shape Dynamics and just change the angles and roundness there, and how big the jitter or the horizontal vertical movement is. Same with scattering, you can really play around with how the trees look there. I'm just going to turn those off for now. I'm just going to start building up with my trees. So when I finished, I want my tree layer to match my my first layer, colour-wise. So again, I can do this either way really. I could change the colour of my front layer to match the trees, because that's probably the quickest and easiest way to go about it. Or I could use colour adjustments on my tree layer. Or I could have just done it in the same colour to start with, but I didn't think of that. So I'm just going to build up the rest of my trees. These layers that have adjustments on, I can either add the trees to the layers, which is what I'm going to do, or I can try and match the colour of the adjustment.
That's it. Another layer about this one. So
yeah, I might just do some tiny ones in here as well. So next I'm going to add the wolf, and he is just a piece of clip art. I just placed him in there. Drop him on the top. I can just drag him to where I want, and then Command T to transform, and I can just resize him till I'm happy with every bit, how big he is. Rotate him a little bit there as well. And I just want to make sure that the wolf is the same colour as my darkest layer there at the front. So I'm going to choose a bit of that and just colour him in. Okay, so next I'm going to put some clouds in behind the mountain. So I'm going to locate the background layer there and just add a new layer. And now choose brush. And look for something cloudy. So looking down these brushes, some of these aren't brush tools, they're dodge brushes and other things. So I'm just looking for something that I think is quite cloudy and will brush on. Just going to choose something from the brush palette that I think is quite cloud-like. You could make your own cloud brush and that would be a much better way to do this. So turn down the opacity. Just paint that in. Okay, so next I'm just going to choose a normal soft round brush, turn the opacity down, and choose the same colour that I used here for these clouds, a nice paley colour. And I'm just going to brush that on a little bit just because I'm not happy with the way the clouds look. And I might do the same down here. I might just pick out one of these colours. And just brush it in a little bit, just to give it a little bit of highlight. And then back to something much lighter. Just highlight the edge of it. So I can get my moon now and just choose where I want to put that. So I can put it behind the mountain in the layers panel. I can go up, down, use it as a sun, Command T to transform it. I might need to drop it in behind the clouds. So I've got lots of parameters there I can work with, lots of ways to change it. I'm just going to go back to my moon because I'm really happy with it, and Command click to select it. And I'm just going to dust over that again with my light brush there, my soft brush, with a slightly lighter colour. Give it a bit of shape. remember we did the tutorial where we did round balls, round shapes. Just bring that out a bit. It is meant to be a 2D flat, but it's kind of subjective, isn't it? Whether you want it to have that or not. Okay, so finally I'm going to come up to the top and just add a new layer to put an adjustment on. And use a hue and saturation adjustment. And from there I can just choose to totally recolour my image. So I go through all the colours there. So I've now got a choice as to whether or not I use a night look or cold look, or come all the way through back to blue there. And I can turn it on and off in the layers menu just to get a different view. So I want you to save that with all the layers because we're going to need those next week for matte painting. So you'll need to have your layers, your Photoshop. So you'll need to have your Photoshop file with all your layers still intact in there for next week. So that would be File, Save As a Photoshop file, and put it somewhere you can find it again for next time.